She pulled an old woman from a burning building, not knowing she'd just saved the grandmother of the vampire Kinjin Return. He swore to protect her daughter, but that protection came with a price, living in his dangerous world, where enemies wanted her dead and every vampire saw humans as prey. The single mom who once cleaned floors for survival now held the power to change an entire kingdom. The smoke alarm screamed at 2:47 a.m., but Hannah was already running. She'd smelled it first, that acrid, electrical stench that meant something was burning inside the walls. In her 6 months as night custodian at Millbrook Tenements, she'd learned to trust her nose more than the ancient alarm system. Everyone out. Fire. Hannah's voice cracked as she pounded on doors, her keys jangling against her hip. Apartment 2B. The Chens with their newborn. 3A. Old Mr. Peterson, who couldn't hear without his aids. Her mind cataloged them all as residents stumbled into the hallway, coughing, confused. But the smoke was thickening faster than it should. Hannah counted heads at the stairwell, her heart hammering. 23 residents on floors 2 through 4. She'd gotten 19 out. For missing. My daughter. Mrs. Chun grabbed Hannah's arm, eyes wild. Mira, I left her sleeping in 5C with Mrs. Petrov. I was just getting diapers from my sisters. The world tilted. Hannah's 7-year-old Mira, sleeping over with the elderly Russian woman in the top-floor apartment because Hannah couldn't afford proper childcare during night shifts. Hannah didn't remember making the decision. One moment she was at the stairwell, the next she was climbing up into the smoke, her maintenance shirt pressed against her nose and mouth. The 4th-floor hallway was hell, black smoke rolling across the ceiling, heat pressing down like a physical weight. The fire had started somewhere in the walls between the 3rd and 4th floors, and it was spreading with terrifying speed. Mira. Hannah's scream was swallowed by the roar of flames. She reached 5C and threw her shoulder against the door. It gave on the second hit, and she tumbled into the apartment. Here, the smoke was lighter. The fire hadn't reached this high yet. But it would. Minutes, maybe. Mira.
Nana.
A small voice, thick with sleep and fear. Relief nearly buckled Hannah's knees. Mira stood in the bedroom doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit, tears streaking her face. Behind her, the elderly Mrs. Petrov sat on the edge of the bed, impossibly calm, cradling a wooden box against her chest. We have to go now. Hannah grabbed Myra's hand and turned to the old woman. Mrs. Petrov, come on. My box. The woman's accent was thick, her roomy eyes fixed on the carved wooden container in her lap. I cannot leave it. We'll come back for it. No, something in Mrs. Petrov's voice made Hannah stop. The old woman looked up, and for just a moment, her clouded eyes seemed to gleam with an inner light. This box must not burn. You do not understand what it contains. The building groaned. Somewhere below, something crashed. Hannah made a split-second calculation, the kind only mothers can make. She scooped Mira onto her back, grabbed the old woman's frail arm with one hand, and snatched the box with the other. Then we take it all. Move. They made it to the stairwell as the 4th-floor hallway erupted behind them. Hannah half-carried, half-dragged Mrs. Petrov down the stairs, Mira clinging to her back, the wooden box wedged under her arm. The old woman was lighter than she should be, almost weightless, but Hannah didn't have time to wonder about it. They burst out the front entrance into the January cold just as fire trucks rounded the corner, sirens wailing. Hannah collapsed onto the frost-hard grass, Mira tumbling beside her, both of them coughing violently. Mama, you're bleeding. Myra's small hands touched Hannah's face. Hannah reached up, felt the warm stickiness. She must have cut her cheek on something during the escape. She looked at Mrs. Petrov, expecting to see the old woman in similar shape. She'd watched her stumble, seen her scrape against the stair railing. But Mrs. Petrov's skin was unmarked. Even the age spots Hannah remembered on her hands seemed faded. Mrs. Petrov, are you? The old woman was staring at her arm, where a deep gash had been bleeding freely just seconds ago. As Hannah watched, The skin knitted itself together, impossibly fast, until only smooth, pale skin remained. Hannah blinked. The smoke inhalation must be making her hallucinate. Then she heard it, the sound of hoofbeats. No, not hoofbeats exactly. Something softer, more deliberate. Like a predator's approach. An elegant black carriage appeared at the end of the street, pulled by horses that were too dark, too silent, their eyes gleaming red in the firelight. The carriage stopped directly in front of them, and the door opened without anyone touching it. A man stepped out. He was tall, impossibly tall, with dark hair that fell past his shoulders and eyes that caught the firelight like a cat's. He wore a long black coat that seemed to absorb the light around it, and when he moved, it was with a fluid grace that made Hannah's survival instincts scream danger. But what made her blood freeze was what happened next. This towering figure, who looked like he could break a man in half, knelt in the frost-dead grass before tiny, elderly Mrs. Petrov. He bowed his head so low it nearly touched the ground. Lady Mircha. His voice was deep, resonant, barely above a whisper, but somehow carrying over the chaos of the fire. We felt your distress. Are you harmed? Lady Mircha, the old woman, not Mrs. Petrov, apparently, rose to her feet with sudden, impossible grace. The frail, elderly woman was gone. In her place stood someone who radiated quiet, ancient authority. I am unharmed, Darian. Her accent had vanished, replaced by perfect, crisp pronunciation. Thanks to this human woman. Those gleaming eyes turned to Hannah, and she finally understood why every prey animal freezes when spotted by a predator. This man, this thing was not human. You saved my grandmother, he said, and there was something like wonder in his voice. From fire. A human risked her life in fire for a vampire. Vampire. The word should have sounded ridiculous. Instead, it sounded like a death sentence. Hannah pulled Mira behind her, every maternal instinct screaming, "Stay away from my daughter." But Lady Mircha, no longer bothering with her Mrs. Petrov disguise, was already moving toward them. She knelt, bringing herself eye level with Hannah, and her hand closed around Hannah's wrist with surprising warmth. You saved my life, child. You risked your most precious treasure, she glanced at Mira, to pull a stranger from flames. That is a debt that must be repaid. I don't want anything from you. Hannah tried to pull away, but the old woman's grip was iron. Whether you want it or not, it exists now. Lady Mircha's other hand pressed against Hannah's bleeding cheek, and Hannah felt a strange warmth spread through her skin. The old laws are absolute. You saved my life. I owe you a life debt. I don't understand. In return for saving me, Lady Mircha's eyes seemed to see something Hannah couldn't, some approaching darkness. Let me safeguard your child. For danger is already coming. The world swam. Hannah felt Myra's small hand clutching her shirt, heard distant sirens, smelled smoke and something else, something copper and ancient. Lady Mircha's face was the last thing she saw before darkness claimed her. The bargain is made, she heard the old woman whisper. Whether you knew it or not. When Hannah's eyes fluttered closed, she didn't see the shadows gathering at the edges of the firelight, shadows that moved against the wind, that watched with hungry, formless eyes. But Lady Mircha and her grandson did. And they knew. The debt had been claimed just in time. Hannah woke to sunlight streaming through curtains she didn't recognize. Wrong ceiling. Wrong smell. No mildew. No neighbors cooking. The mattress beneath her was too soft, the sheets too clean. Panic surged through her chest. Mira. She bolted upright. I'm here, Mama. Her daughter sat cross-legged on a velvet armchair that probably cost more than Hannah's yearly salary, munching toast. The nice lady made me breakfast. We're in a hotel. Not a hotel. Hannah's eyes adjusted, taking in the ornate furniture. The oil paintings on walls covered in burgundy silk. This was someone's home, someone wealthy enough to make her studio apartment look like a cardboard box. The door opened without a knock. Lady Mircha entered, no longer stooped or elderly. She moved like a dancer, wearing an elegant dress that belonged in a period drama. Behind her came the tall man from last night, Darian, and three others who radiated the same predatory stillness. "You fainted from smoke inhalation," Lady Mircea said calmly, settling into a chair as if they were discussing the weather. "We brought you to our temporary residence. Your building is uninhabitable. Where are my things? Where are the other residents?" Hannah pulled Mira close, very aware that they were in a room full of vampires. Vampires. Her mind still wanted to reject the word. "The Red Cross has sheltered them," Darian spoke, his voice carrying that same unnatural resonance. "Your belongings were destroyed in the fire, but that is not why we're here." He moved to the window, and even that simple action looked choreographed, purposeful. "My grandmother insists on honoring her debt to you. That means bringing you under our protection." "I don't need protection. I need to find a new apartment and get back to work." "You misunderstand," Darian turned, and his eyes, definitely not human, too bright, pupils too vertical, fixed on her. "This is not a request. My grandmother made a blood oath. Whether you knew it or not, you accepted when you saved her life and heard her words. That bargain is binding." "That's insane. I'm not going anywhere with." The window exploded inward. Hannah screamed, throwing herself over Mira as glass rained down. But the glass never touched them. One of Darian's guards had moved faster than Hannah's eyes could track, his body forming a shield between them and the window. Through the shattered frame, something poured in, not quite smoke, not quite shadow. It had weight, substance, and it moved with terrible intelligence. The temperature plummeted. "Shadow wraiths," Lady Mircea said, her voice sharp. "They've found her already. Get the human and child to the carriage." Now Darian's voice cracked like a whip. The guard who'd shielded them scooped up both Hannah and Mira as if they weighed nothing. Hannah caught a glimpse of Darian moving toward the shadows, his hand extending, and something like black fire erupted from his palm. Then they were in the hallway, racing towards stairs. Behind them, she heard crashes, inhuman shrieks, the sound of reality tearing. "What's happening?" Hannah's voice pitched high with terror. "You have been marked," the guard said, his accent vaguely Eastern European. "The fire last night was no accident. They wanted Lady Mircea dead. Now they know you saved her. They will come for you, and anything you love." "Who's they?" "Enemies of the crown. Human rebels who deal with dark magic. Take your pick." They burst onto the street where the black carriage waited, horses stamping nervously. The guard deposited them inside. The interior was impossibly spacious, lined with black velvet, lit by lamps that held cold blue flames. Mira whimpered, pressing into Hannah's side. "Mana, imskarid." "I know, baby. I know." Hannah held her tight, her mind racing. This was impossible. All of it. Vampires, shadow monsters, blood oaths. Lady Mircea and Darian entered the carriage moments later, followed by the guards. No one looked injured, but Darian's coat was smoking slightly. "Dispatch scouts," Darian ordered one guard. "I want to know who sent them. And increase the perimeter around the citadel. We leave within the hour." "Leave to where?" Hannah demanded, finding her voice. "I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what the hell is going on." Lady Mircea's expression softened, the first genuine emotion Hannah had seen from her. "My child, you saved my life. That created a connection between us, written in the old laws that govern my kind. Those who wish me dead now know your face, your scent, your daughter's existence. So protect us here. We cannot." Darian leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Human cities are too exposed. Too many entry points, too many crowds to hide in. Those wraiths were just probing attacks. The real assassins will come tonight, tomorrow, every night until you're dead. Then call the police." "The police cannot fight shadows," Miss Hayes, his use of her name jolted her. She hadn't told him. "But my citadel can. It has stood for 3,000 years. Its walls are carved with protections that would incinerate those creatures before they cross the threshold.
Your
citadel. The vampire capital, Lady Mircea said quietly. Deep in the Carpathian Mountains, where my grandson rules as king of our kind. The carriage was already moving, Hannah realized. She hadn't felt it start. You're kidnapping us. We are saving you, Darian corrected. There is a difference. Those shadows will return. They will find your daughter's daycare, your place of work, every coffee shop you frequent. They will kill everyone who has ever spoken to you, just to draw you out, he paused. Or they will take your daughter and make you watch what they do to her. Hannah's blood turned to ice. Mira looked up at her with wide, trusting eyes. Mama, are the shadow things going to hurt us? Hannah kissed her daughter's forehead, tasting the salt of her own tears. She thought of the wraith pouring through the window, of how easily it had shattered glass, of how her kitchen knife would have been useless against it. How long? Her voice came out hollow. Until the threat is eliminated, Darian said.
Days. Weeks.
Perhaps months. Hannah closed her eyes. No job. No home. No choice. If anything happens to my daughter, then I will hand you the blade to take my life yourself, Lady Mircea said solemnly. You have my word. Through the carriage window, Hannah watched her city disappear behind them and wondered if she would ever see it again. The journey took 3 days, though Hannah lost track of time in the windowless private jet and then the enclosed carriage that met them at a remote airstrip. Mira slept through most of it, courtesy of what Lady Mircea called a gentle dream blessing, which Hannah suspected was vampire mind manipulation but couldn't protest because her exhausted daughter needed rest. Hannah didn't sleep. She watched. She watched how the guards never ate, never drank, barely blinked. How Lady Mircea read books in languages that predated modern civilization. How Darian spent hours on a strange crystalline device that projected holographic reports, his expression growing darker with each one. The attacks are escalating, he said once, catching her staring. 5 attempts on noble houses in the past month. Someone is trying to destabilize the court. And I'm caught in the middle of your vampire politics, Hannah said bitterly. Yes, he didn't apologize. But you're alive. That counts for something. Now, as the carriage climbed a mountain road so steep it defied physics, Hannah pressed her face to the window and saw it. The Crimson Citadel. It wasn't a castle. It was a city carved directly into red stone mountains, spiraling upward like a massive crown of towers and bridges. Windows glowed with that same cold blue light. Waterfalls of something darker than water cascaded down the rock faces. And at its peak, a palace of black glass and crimson stone that seemed to drink in the moonlight. It's beautiful, Mira whispered, awake now, nose pressed to the glass beside her mother. It's a cage, Hannah murmured. It's home, Lady Mircea corrected gently. And it will keep you safe. The carriage passed through gates that hummed with invisible energy, making Hannah's teeth ache. Guards lined the entrance, pale, still, eyes tracking their arrival with unsettling focus. As they descended, Hannah realized what was wrong.
No one's.
Not one. The courtyard they entered was full of vampires in elaborate clothing, silks and velvets in deep colors, jewelry that caught the light wrong. They all stopped and stared as the carriage door opened. Lady Mircea stepped out first, then Darian. The crowd bowed as one, a wave of deference that would have been impressive if it wasn't so eerie. Then Hannah stepped down, Myra's hand clutched in hers. The whispers started immediately. Human? She brought a human here? And a child. Can you smell the child's blood? Is that the one who saved Lady Mircea? I heard she made a bargain. This is madness. Silence. Darian's voice didn't rise in volume, but it carried weight that pressed down like a physical force. The courtyard went deathly quiet. This is Hannah Hayes and her daughter Mira. They are under Lady Mircea's protection and, by extension, mine. Anyone who threatens them answers to me personally. A vampire in an elaborate gold-embroidered coat stepped forward, his smile showing too many teeth. Of course, Your Majesty. We would never dream of threatening your
guests.
though one wonders what accommodations suit such delicate creatures. The servant quarters, perhaps? They will have the east wing, Lady Mircea said sharply. The guest suites reserved for foreign dignitaries. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My lady, a woman in deep purple interjected, her voice honeyed with false concern. Surely humans would be more comfortable somewhere less. Overwhelming? The East Wing has hosted vampire royalty for centuries. The decor alone might frighten them. Then they will redecorate as they wish, Darian said flatly. He turned to a severe-looking vampire woman who'd appeared at his elbow. Ilara, escort them to their quarters. Assign 2 guards, discreet ones. And find clothing suitable for the child. She's been wearing the same dress for 3 days. The woman, Ilara, bowed stiffly. Her eyes swept over Hannah and Mira with barely concealed disdain. As you command, Your Majesty. Though I must note that we have no human-sized clothing in stock. It will take time. Then improvise, Lady Mircea said coldly. Or shall I tell the king you were too incompetent to clothe a 7-year-old? Ilara's jaw tightened. Of course not, my lady. This way. As they followed her into the citadel, Hannah felt hundreds of eyes boring into her back. She heard the whispers resume, sharper now. She'll corrupt the court. Mark my words, this ends in blood. Humans don't belong here. The interior was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. Corridors stretched impossibly long, walls carved with reliefs of battles and ceremonies that made Hannah's stomach turn. Chandeliers of black crystal cast shadows that moved wrong. Tapestries depicted vampires feeding, ruling, conquering. Mira pressed closer to her mother's side. They climbed 3 flights of stairs, or maybe 4. Hannah lost count in the labyrinthine passages, before reaching a hallway lined with doors carved from dark wood. Ilara opened the last one with a key that looked medieval. You're sweet, she said icily. Meals will be brought at dawn and dusk. Do not wander the halls alone. Many of our kind have not fed in your presence before, and accidents do happen. It wasn't a warning. It was a threat. The door closed behind them with a sound like a tomb ceiling. Hannah stood in the center of the most luxurious room she'd ever seen, silk curtains, furniture that belonged in a museum, a bed large enough for 5 people, and felt the walls closing in.
Nga.
Mira tugged her hand. Can we go home now? Hannah knelt, pulling her daughter close, and lied the way mothers do. Soon, baby.
Soon.
But as she looked at the door, the only exit, with guards undoubtedly posted outside, she realized the horrible truth Lady Mircea had tried to tell her. Comfort was just a prettier word for cage. And she had no idea how to escape. The first 3 days passed in suffocating luxury. Meals appeared at their door, elaborate dishes Hannah couldn't identify, though thankfully someone had included simple bread and fruit after Mira refused to eat. The weird red soup. The guards outside never spoke, never moved except to track them with their eyes when the door opened. Hannah tried the window on day 2. It opened easily, onto a 300-foot drop to jagged rocks below. Subtle, she muttered. On the 4th morning, Lady Mircea arrived unannounced, sweeping into their suite with the ease of someone who'd never needed permission for anything. The child comes with me today, she announced. Hannah stepped between Mircea and Mira instantly. Absolutely not. I am not asking, dear. Mircea's smile was gentle but immovable. Mira cannot stay locked in this room for weeks. She needs stimulation, education, socialization. With vampires? With me, Mircea knelt, addressing Mira directly. Would you like to see the library, little one? It has books with pictures of dragons and phoenixes. Real drawings, made by people who actually saw them. Myra's eyes went wide. Real dragons? Don't. Hannah started, but Mira was already nodding eagerly. I promise she will not leave my sight, Mircea said, standing. And I am far older and more dangerous than any vampire in this citadel who might wish her harm. She is safer with me than locked in this room while you slowly lose your mind. The truth of it stung. Hannah had been pacing like a caged animal, jumping at shadows, checking and rechecking the door locks that wouldn't keep out anything that truly wanted in. 2 hours, Hannah said finally. And I'm coming with you. One does not dictate terms to Lady Mircea. Alara's voice came from the doorway. The severe vampire woman stood there with a tea service, her expression disapproving. Your morning refreshments as ordered. She set the tray on the table with deliberate care. Too much care. Thank you, Alara, Mircea said dismissively. That will be all. After Alara left, Hannah approached the tea warily. The cups were porcelain, delicate. The tea itself smelled floral, pleasant. But something made her hesitate. Mama, I'm thirsty. Mira reached for a cup. Hannah grabbed her hand. Wait, she picked up the cup, sniffed it. Normal. She wet her finger with the tea, touched it to her tongue. Bitter. Underneath the floral scent, a bitter chemical taste that didn't belong. Don't drink this, Hannah set the cup down carefully, her heart pounding. She looked at Lady Mircea. Is this what I think it is? Mircea's expression had gone cold and deadly. She lifted the cup, inhaled, and her eyes flashed with ancient rage. Nightshade extract. Enough to kill a human child in minutes. An adult in an hour. The room temperature dropped. Someone tried to poison my daughter. Hannah's voice shook with fury instead of fear. In your citadel. Under your protection. And they will answer for it. Mircea swept to the door, yanking it open. The guards jumped. Find Alara. Bring her to the throne room.
Now.
And send word to my grandson. Someone has just committed an act of war. Within the hour, Hannah found herself in a cavernous hall of black marble and crimson banners. Vampires lined the walls, hundreds of them, noble and ancient, all watching with predatory interest as Alara was dragged before Darian's throne. I brought tea as instructed. Alara protested, though her voice wavered. I don't know anything about poison. The kitchen staff confirms you personally prepared the tray, Darian said, his voice echoing through the hall. Against protocol. You dismissed the human food specialist and did it yourself. I was being efficient. You were being treasonous, Lady Mircea stepped forward, holding the teacup. Nightshade extract. You tried to murder a child under my protection. The assembled vampires murmured. Some looked shocked. Others looked calculating. She's just a human. Alara's composure cracked. One human child. You're risking everything for her, bringing humans into the court, giving them our sacred spaces, letting them see our secrets. Next you'll be letting them into the council chambers, giving them voices in our politics. So you decided to kill her, Darian said softly, dangerously. I decided to protect our way of life. Alara's eyes blazed. And I'm not alone. Others agree. Humans corrupt everything they touch. That woman, she pointed at Hannah, standing near a pillar with Mira clutched to her side, has been here 4 days and already the court is divided. She's dangerous, not because of what she is, but because of what she represents. And what is that? Lady Mircea asked. Change. Weakness. The beginning of the end. Alara lifted her chin. Kill me if you want, Your Majesty. But my death won't stop what's coming. Half the court believes humans should be food or servants, nothing more. They will never accept her presence here. Silence fell like a hammer. Darian stood, descending from his throne with deliberate steps. When he reached Alara, he looked down at her with eyes that held centuries of judgment. You're right, he said quietly. Your death won't stop what's coming. He turned to address the entire hall, his voice carrying to every corner. But perhaps it will clarify my position. Hannah Hayes saved my grandmother's life, the woman who raised me, who held this kingdom together through 3 civil wars. That debt is sacred. Anyone who threatens her or her child threatens me directly. His gaze swept the crowd. And I am not known for my mercy. He looked back at Alara. You are stripped of your position and exiled. You have until dawn to leave the citadel. If you ever return, your life is forfeit. Alara's face went white. Your Majesty, please. Exile is a death sentence. So is poisoning children, he gestured, and guards dragged her away, her protests echoing. As the hall emptied, nobles casting dark looks at Hannah, Lady Mircea touched her shoulder gently. "You see now what you've walked into," she said quietly. "This is not just about keeping you safe. Your presence here forces questions my grandson's court has avoided for centuries." Hannah pulled Mira closer, watching vampires file out, their whispers like poison in the air. "What questions?" "Whether humans are worth protecting, worth respecting, worth anything at all." Mircea's expression was sad. "And some will kill to answer no." 2 weeks after the poisoning attempt, Lady Mircea announced she was taking Mira to the night market in the lower city. "Absolutely not," Hannah said immediately. They were in Mircea's private chambers, a sprawling suite filled with artifacts that predated written history. Mira sat on a cushion, practicing the letters Mircea had been teaching her. The old vampire had taken her education seriously, spending hours each day with the girl. "The child needs fresh air," Mircea said calmly, pouring tea, which Hannah now watched being prepared from start to finish. "She's been confined to the citadel for weeks. The night market is beautiful, perfectly safe." "Safe? Someone tried to poison her. And that person is exiled. Besides, I will be with her. As will 6 guards." Mircea's expression softened. "Hannah, you cannot keep her locked away forever. Fear is its own prison." Hannah wanted to argue, but she'd seen Myra's spirit dimming. Her daughter barely smiled anymore, flinched at shadows, asked every night when they could go home. Maybe Mircea was right. Maybe fresh air, even in a vampire city, was better than this gilded cage. "I'm coming with you," Hannah said finally. "Of course. I wouldn't have it any other way." The lower city was nothing like Hannah expected. Where the citadel above was all Gothic grandeur and cold stone, the market district sprawled in organized chaos, stalls lit by enchanted lanterns, vampires haggling over everything from silk to strange artifacts that hummed with power. Music drifted from somewhere, haunting and beautiful. Myra's eyes went wide with wonder. "Mama, look, that lady has purple hair." "It's moonflower dye," Mircea explained, leading them deeper into the market. "Permanent for humans, fades for our kind within days. Quite fashionable." The vampires here were different from court nobles, less formal, more relaxed. Some even nodded respectfully to Lady Mircea. A few stared at Hannah and Mira with curiosity rather than contempt. "They're lower-born," Mircea explained quietly. "Workers, craftsmen, merchants. They have less invested in court politics and more in survival. To them, you're just another oddity in a city full of them." Hannah was beginning to relax when she noticed them. 3 figures in dark cloaks, moving parallel to their path. Not shopping, not stopping at stalls.
Just
tracking. Her time in rough neighborhoods had taught Hannah to recognize when she was being followed. She squeezed Mircea's arm gently. "Don't react," Hannah murmured. 3 o'clock, 2 stalls back. Gray cloaks. "They've been following us for 5 minutes. Mircea's expression didn't change, but Hannah felt the tension in her arm. "You're certain?" "I grew up in neighborhoods where you learned to spot trouble or became it. They're not browsing. They're hunting." "Interesting." Mircea bent down, pretending to examine a display of crystals. "I knew there would be another attempt eventually, but I expected something more subtle." "Wait, you expected this?" Hannah hissed. "Of course. Alara was a blade, not the hand wielding it. Someone wanted her to kill your daughter, knowing it would either succeed or expose her as incompetent. A win either way." Mircea's eyes gleamed. "What I didn't expect was for you to notice our followers before my guards did." Hannah glanced at the 6 vampire guards positioned around them. None seemed alert to the threat. "Your guards are focused outward, watching for external threats. They're not expecting danger from what looks like other vampires in their own city." Hannah's mind raced. "We need to get Mira somewhere safe."
now.
"Agreed." Mircea straightened, taking Myra's hand with a gentle smile. "Mira, dear, would you like to see where they make candied moonberries? It's just down this side street. Very exclusive." The alley Mircea led them down was narrower, darker. Hannah's instincts screamed trap, but she trusted that the ancient vampire had a plan. They were halfway down when the cloaked figures stepped into both ends of the alley, blocking escape. Lady Mircea, one called, voice distorted by magic. How kind of you to make this easy. The guards moved into defensive positions, but Hannah noticed something wrong. They were slower than they should be, their movements sluggish. The tea at the market stall, Mircea said coldly. The one where we stopped. You drugged my guards. Silver dust in the steam. The figure confirmed. Brilliant, isn't it? Won't kill them, but it'll slow them enough. Mircea pushed Mira behind her, and Hannah immediately wrapped herself around her daughter. Who sent you? Does it matter? You've made enemies, old woman. By protecting that human, by letting her child corrupt our ways, by allowing your grandson to entertain notions of human rights, the figure laughed. The court is fracturing because of her. So we remove the problem. They raised their hands, and darkness began to pool, the same living shadow Hannah had seen in the apartment. Wraith magic, Mircea hissed. You're working with shadow casters. That's forbidden. Many things are forbidden. That doesn't stop them from being necessary. The shadows lunged. Mircea's hand shot out, and light, pure, searing white light, exploded from her palm. The shadows recoiled, shrieking. The guards, fighting through their drugged stupor, engaged the cloaked figures. Run, Mircea shouted. Back to the main street. Hannah didn't need to be told twice. She scooped Mira up and ran, dodging between the fighting, her heart hammering. Behind her, she heard screams, both vampire and something else, something that didn't sound like it should exist. They burst into the main market, and Hannah kept running, pushing through crowds, until she saw him. Darian, striding through the market with his personal guard, his face thunderous. He must have sensed the disturbance. Your Majesty, Hannah gasped, stumbling to a halt. Lady Mircea, alley, shadowcasters. His eyes widened fractionally. Then he was moving, faster than sight, his guards flowing after him like a dark tide. Hannah collapsed against a stall, Mira sobbing in her arms, and realized something terrifying. She'd just saved Lady Mircea again. And this time, she'd proven that her human instincts, her survival skills from a hard life, were sharper than vampire senses dulled by centuries of superiority. When Darian and Mircea returned minutes later, 3 unconscious cloaked figures floating behind them in magical bonds, Darian looked at Hannah with new eyes. You spotted them, he said. Not a question. Yes. My trained guards did not. They weren't expecting threats from within. He studied her for a long moment.
Come.
We have much to discuss. As they walked back to the citadel, Hannah realized the game had changed. She wasn't just a protected witness anymore. She'd become valuable. The interrogation of the shadowcasters revealed what Darian had suspected, a conspiracy involving at least a dozen court nobles, multiple external allies, and resources that shouldn't exist within the citadel's walls. What it didn't reveal was who led them. They died before talking, Darian told Hannah 3 days later. They were in his private study, a room she'd been summoned to increasingly often. Killed by a failsafe curse. Whoever is orchestrating this doesn't leave loose ends. Hannah sat across from him, Mira finally asleep in their quarters under Mircea's personal watch. Why are you telling me this? Because you see things my people don't. He poured 2 glasses of something amber. Slid one to her. You noticed those assassins when 6 trained guards missed them. You identified poison tea by taste alone. You understand threat assessment in ways my court has forgotten. He paused. I need that perspective. Hannah stared at the glass. I'm not a strategist. I'm a janitor who got lucky. You're a survivor who learned to read danger because your life depended on it. That's more valuable than 1,000 years of court politics. He leaned forward. Tell me what you've observed. Not about the attacks, about my court. What have you seen? Hannah took a sip. It burned pleasantly. You want honesty? I wouldn't ask otherwise. Your nobles are terrified of change. They've had power for centuries, and humans represent unpredictability. We're short-lived, emotional, chaotic. We die and reproduce fast, which means we adapt fast. That scares them, she met his eyes. But it's not just fear. It's contempt. They see humans as food or furniture. The idea that we might be equals or, God forbid, that we might see things they miss, it threatens their entire worldview. Darian's expression was unreadable. And what would you do about it? Stop asking me. I'm not qualified. Humor me. Hannah thought of every bad boss, every corrupt landlord, every system that had ground her down. You can't force respect, but you can force exposure. Make them interact with humans as people, not servants. Create situations where they have to acknowledge our value, she shrugged. Or keep using fear. Your exile of Alara made a statement. But fear only works until someone decides they're willing to die for their cause. Perceptive, he studied her. How would you feel about attending the Moonlit Garden reception tomorrow? What's that? A diplomatic gathering. Representatives from all major vampire houses, some werewolf clan leaders, a few fae dignitaries. Normally, humans attend only as servants. His smile was sharp. I want you there as my guest. Hannah's stomach dropped. That's suicide. That's strategy. You've already become a symbol. Might as well control the narrative. And if someone tries to kill me in front of everyone, then I'll know exactly who my enemies are. He said it so casually, like he wasn't proposing to use her as bait. Lady Mircha will be there, as will my entire personal guard. You'll be as safe as I can make you. That's not very reassuring. It's honest, he stood. Think about it. But Hannah, hiding won't make you safer. They already know you're here. Might as well show them you're not afraid. The next evening, Hannah stood in a borrowed gown of deep green silk, feeling like a fraud. Mircha had arranged for clothes, jewelry, even coached her on basic court etiquette. Mira was safely tucked in with 3 guards and a stack of storybooks. You look terrified, Mircha observed as they walked toward the moonlit gardens. I am terrified.
Good.
Fear keeps you sharp, Mircha squeezed her arm. Remember, you're not here to impress them. You're here to unsettle them. Let them wonder why the king values a human's counsel. The moonlit gardens were breathtaking, an open-air courtyard where silver trees grew from crystal soil, their leaves casting ethereal light. Vampires in elaborate finery clustered in groups, drinking blood wine from crystal glasses, their conversations hushed and sharp. Every single one stopped talking when Hannah entered on Darian's arm. Ladies and gentlemen, Darian's voice carried across the garden. May I introduce Hannah Hayes, honored guest of House Vale and savior of Lady Mircha. Polite applause. Beneath it, a current of hostility so thick Hannah could taste it. The next hour was a masterclass in social warfare. Nobles approached with false smiles and barbed questions. How quaint a human at court. Tell me, Miss Hayes, do you find our customs very barbaric? Do you miss the sun? I imagine darkness must be so oppressive for your kind. Your daughter is precious, so fragile. It must be terrifying, raising something so breakable in a place like this. Each comment was a test, a probe, a reminder that she didn't belong. Hannah smiled through gritted teeth until she saw it. A vampire noble, Lord Cassius, she'd learned, had cornered a young human servant girl near the fountain. He held her wrist in a crushing grip, his other hand tilting her face up roughly. Clumsy thing spilled wine on my coat, he announced to nearby nobles who laughed. Perhaps I should teach it some manners. The girl whimpered, tears streaming down her face. Something in Hannah snapped. She crossed the garden in long strides, all pretense of politeness gone. Let her go. Cassius looked up, surprised. Excuse me? I said let her go.
Now.
His expression curdled into contempt. This doesn't concern you, human. This is a servant being disciplined. This is a child being abused, Hannah's voice carried across the garden. Conversation stopped.
Let
her go. Or what? Cassius smiled, showing fangs. You'll stop me? Hannah grabbed a glass of blood wine from a nearby table and threw it directly in his face. The garden went dead silent. Cassius released the girl, who fled. He stood there, wine dripping from his aristocratic features, his expression murderous. "You dare." "I dare," Hannah's heart hammered, but she didn't back down. "You want to hurt someone? Try me. But leave that girl alone. You've just assaulted a noble of House Draven." Cassius snarled. "The penalty is death." "The penalty is whatever I decide it is," Darian's voice cut through the tension. He'd appeared beside Hannah, his presence radiating controlled fury. And Miss Hayes acted within her rights. "The girl is under Citadel protection. Your treatment of her was unlawful. She's a servant. She's a person," Darian's eyes flashed. "As is Miss Hayes. As are all humans within these walls. That is my decree, Lord Cassius. Challenge it again, and you'll join Alara in exile." Cassius bowed stiffly, rage burning in his eyes. "As you wish, Your Majesty." He stalked away, but not before shooting Hannah a look of pure hatred. The rest of the reception was subdued. Nobles gave Hannah wide berth, their whispers following her like smoke. Later, as Mircea escorted her back to her quarters, the old vampire shook her head. "That was either very brave or very foolish." "Probably both," Hannah admitted, her hands still shaking. "You've made a powerful enemy. Cassius has allies, resources, grudges that span centuries. I couldn't just watch." "I know," Mircea smiled sadly. "That's why you're dangerous, child. You have something most of us lost millennia ago." "What's that?" "A conscience that demands action." As Hannah entered her quarters and pulled a sleeping Mira close, she realized the truth. She'd stopped being just a protected witness tonight. She'd become a symbol, for better or worse, of everything the old guard feared. And symbols, she knew, had a way of getting people killed. The eclipse banquet was mandatory for all nobles, an ancient tradition held when the moon turned blood red and full. Every house, every clan, every vampire of standing had to attend and renew their oath of loyalty to the crown. Which meant the conspirators would all be in one room. Hannah realized this 2 weeks after the garden incident, while reviewing seating charts with Darian. She'd somehow become his unofficial advisor, spending hours discussing court dynamics, identifying faction patterns, mapping relationships. "Cassius will be seated here." Darian indicated a position near the high table, with Lord Vex and Lady Thorn. Houses Draven, Morn, and Shadowmere, all old bloodlines, all resistant to reform. Hannah studied the chart, thinking of the whispered conversations she'd overheard, the meaningful glances between certain nobles, the way some avoided others. "They're not just resistant. They're organized." "What do you mean?" "Look at the patterns," she traced connections. Every attack, the fire, the poisoning, the night market, involved different methods but similar timing. Someone's coordinating them, someone with access to shadow magic, poison, and insider knowledge. She tapped Cassius's name. "He's been too quiet since the garden."
No retaliation, no challenges.
"That's not noble pride. That's strategy." Darian's eyes narrowed. "You think he's the one. I think he's connected. And I think the eclipse banquet is when they'll make their move." Hannah met his gaze. "Everyone will be there, including Lady Mircea. It's the perfect opportunity." "To do what?" "Kill her. Frame the humans. Maybe me specifically. Destabilize your rule by proving you can't protect your own grandmother." Hannah's hands clenched. "I've seen this before, just on a smaller scale. Gangs in my neighborhood used big gatherings to settle scores. Lots of witnesses, lots of chaos, easy to disappear in the confusion." Darian was quiet for a long moment. "If you're right, we could set a trap. Or I could be wrong and we tip them off." "No," his expression hardened. "Your instincts have been right every time. We use the banquet, but carefully." The night of the eclipse, the great hall blazed with black candles and crimson banners. Hundreds of vampires filled the space, their finery a display of wealth and power that made Hannah's borrowed gown, deep midnight blue, courtesy of Mircea, feel woefully inadequate. She sat at the high table between Mircea and Darian, hyper-aware of hostile stares. Mira was safely hidden in the royal quarters with Darian's most trusted guards. "Remember," Darian murmured, "stay close to my grandmother. If anything happens—" "I know the plan," Hannah's heart hammered. They'd gone over it a dozen times.
Watch.
Listen. Wait for the conspirators to reveal themselves. The banquet proceeded with formal speeches and ritualistic toasts. Hannah picked at food she couldn't identify, her attention on Cassius 3 tables away. He sat with Vex and Thorn, their heads bent together in whispered conversation. Then Mircea stood to give the traditional blessing, an ancient rite where the eldest vampire present called down protection for the gathering. Hannah saw it before it happened. Cassius's hand moving beneath the table. Vex's slight nod. Thorn's fingers tracing symbols in spilled wine. The way other nobles, 6, 8, maybe 10, all shifted simultaneously, creating sightline blocks. "It's now," Hannah hissed. "They're casting something." The candles exploded into darkness. Screams erupted. In the sudden black, Hannah felt rather than saw movement. Bodies rushing, steel being drawn, the electric crackle of magic. She grabbed Mircea's arm. "Stay down. I'm 5,000 years old. Child, I don't stay." Light blazed, Darian's power, white and searing. It revealed the conspiracy in perfect clarity. Cassius and his allies, hands raised, shadows pooling at their feet. Not attacking the king. Attacking the servants' entrance where human staff cowered. They were going to slaughter the humans and blame it on chaos, on the darkness, on anything but themselves. But Hannah had warned Darian, and the servants weren't really servants. They were guards in disguise.
Now.
Darian's voice rang out. The servants moved within human speed, tackling the shadow casters before their spell could complete. More guards poured from hidden positions. Within seconds, Cassius and 11 other nobles were on the ground, bound in chains that glowed with suppression runes. Treachery. Darian's voice shook the hall. Conspiracy to commit murder. Use of forbidden shadow magic within the citadel walls. Attack on House Vale during a sacred gathering. Cassius struggled against his bonds, fury twisting his features. "This is a setup. You used that human to trap us." "I used Miss Hayes's insight to catch criminals," Darian corrected coldly. "She noticed what my entire security force missed, that you were coordinating attacks. That you planned to massacre humans tonight and use the chaos to eliminate my grandmother. We were protecting our way of life." Lord Vex shouted. "You're destroying everything our kind built. Humans don't belong in our world. They're food, not equals. This woman has corrupted you, turned you against your own people." "My own people don't murder children," Darian said softly, dangerously. "They don't poison guests. They don't traffic with shadowcasters or plot regicide." He looked around the hall at hundreds of witnesses. "But apparently some do." Lady Thorne spat at Hannah's feet. "This isn't over. Kill us if you want. There are others who agree. Humans are a disease, and you've invited it into our heart. The court will fracture. There will be civil war. And it's all because of her." Silence fell. Hannah felt every eye in the hall turn to her. Some looked angry. Some looked afraid. Some looked thoughtful. She stood, her legs shaking but her voice steady. "I didn't ask to be here. I didn't want your politics or your power games. I just wanted to save my daughter." She looked at Thorn, then at the assembled nobles. "But you're right about one thing. I have changed things. I've made you ask questions you'd rather ignore. Are humans worth protecting? Worth respecting? Worth anything besides being prey?" She took a breath. "I don't know your answer, but I know mine. And I know that any society that can't protect its weakest members is already dying. You don't need humans to destroy you. You're doing fine on your own." She sat down, her whole body trembling. Darian stood, his presence filling the hall. "The conspirators will be tried according to the old laws. Their houses will be investigated. And this court will decide, once and for all, what kind of kingdom we are." He gestured, and guards dragged the prisoners away, their protests echoing. As the hall slowly emptied, nobles whispering among themselves, Mircea touched Hannah's shoulder. "You realize what you've done?" the ancient vampire asked quietly. "Made everything worse.
No Mircea Ismail.
You've forced a conversation that's been delayed for 1,000 years. Whatever happens next, there's no going back." Hannah thought of Mira, waiting in the royal quarters. Of the human servants who'd looked at her with something like hope. Of the long road ahead.
Good, she said.
Because I'm tired of going back. The trials lasted 3 weeks. By ancient law, each conspirator was given the right to present their defense before the full court. What emerged was uglier than Hannah had imagined. Centuries of resentment, fear masked as tradition, and a fundamental belief that humans were inherently inferior. But something else emerged too. Younger vampires, those less than 5 centuries old, began speaking up, questioning the old ways, pointing out that the conspirators' methods had been dishonorable, cowardly, everything vampire society claimed to despise. They poisoned a child, one young noble declared during the proceedings. They hired shadowcasters, magic our own laws forbid. They attacked during a sacred gathering. Whether you agree with humans in the Citadel or not, that is what should concern you. The shift was subtle but real. The question wasn't becoming, should humans be here? It was becoming, what kind of vampires are we? On the final day of trials, Darian passed judgment. Cassius, Vex, and Thorn were sentenced to execution, not for their views, but for murder, conspiracy, and use of forbidden magic. 5 others received exile. 3 were stripped of titles, but allowed to remain, under strict supervision. Let it be known, Darian announced to the assembled court, that this kingdom will not tolerate treachery, regardless of the cause. Your views are your own. Your actions are subject to law. He paused, then continued. And effective immediately, I am establishing new protections for humans within vampire territories. No human may be fed upon without explicit consent. No human servant may be harmed without due process. Any human who saves a vampire life may claim guest right for 1 year. Gasps rippled through the hall. This is madness, someone started. This is law, Darian said flatly. Challenge it and face the same fate as these conspirators. After the trials, Hannah found herself in Mircea's chambers once more. The old vampire sat by her window, watching the blood moon set. You're leaving, Mircea said without turning. It wasn't a question. Hannah nodded, though Mircea couldn't see it. The threat's over. Mira needs to be around other children. Needs normalcy. And she trailed off. You've been cage fighting with vampires for 2 months and need to remember what sunshine feels like, Mircea finished, turning with a gentle smile. I understand. But know this, you and Mira will always have sanctuary here. The bargain I made that night, it doesn't end. I saved your life. You protected Mira. We're even. Debts between our kind are never that simple, Mircea stood, crossing to a small chest. She withdrew a pendant on a silver chain, a crimson stone that pulsed with inner light.
Take this.
If you ever need help, hold it and speak my name. I will come. Hannah accepted it, the metal warm against her palm. Thank you. For everything. For teaching Mira, for protecting us, for treating us like people. You made that impossible not to do. Mircea's eyes held ancient sadness. I have lived 5,000 years, child. I have seen empires rise and fall, species go extinct, and civilizations collapse. But I have rarely seen someone fight as fiercely for their child as you have. That kind of love, it transcends species. They embraced, and Hannah realized she would miss this dangerous, complicated creature who had somehow become a friend. Darian met them in the courtyard where the carriage waited. Mira bounced excitedly, chattering about seeing her old friends, about her new school, about everything except the nightmares she still had. The Citadel will arrange housing, Darian said, handing Hannah an envelope. And employment if you wish it. Consider it compensation for your Advisory services. Hannah opened it. Her breath caught. The amount could support them for years. I can't accept this. You can and will. You helped expose a conspiracy that would have torn this kingdom apart. You earned it. His expression softened slightly. Besides, Mira deserves a childhood that doesn't involve assassination attempts. Thank you. Hannah met his eyes, still inhuman, still predatory, but somehow less frightening now. For listening. For changing things. You changed things. I simply didn't stand in your way, he knelt, addressing Mira directly. Stay curious, little one. Keep asking questions. The world needs people who refuse to accept, because that's how it's always been. Mira giggled. I will. Bye, Mr. King. As the carriage pulled away, Hannah looked back at the Crimson Citadel one last time. Vampires lined the walls, some glaring, some waving, all watching. She'd arrived a prisoner. She was leaving. Something else entirely. 6 months later, Hannah stood in the doorway of their new apartment. Modest but comfortable, in a neighborhood with good schools and better security. Mira was at soccer practice, thriving, the nightmares finally fading. Hannah worked as a safety consultant now, helping buildings implement proper emergency protocols. The irony wasn't lost on her. The fire that destroyed her old life had given her expertise that saved others. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Council meeting next month. Your insight on human-vampire trade agreements would be valuable.
Anna smiled.
Darian had been sending these requests monthly. Sometimes she accepted, traveling to the Citadel for a few days, offering her outsider's perspective. Sometimes she declined, reminding him she had a life to live. But she always answered. Because she'd learned something in those terrifying, transformative months. Change didn't require crowns or power or centuries of life. It required courage to speak truth, even when the truth was uncomfortable. It required refusing to look away when people suffered. It required believing that different didn't mean worthless. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. She opened it to find a delivery, a package wrapped in midnight blue silk. Inside was a book, leather-bound and ancient, with a note in Mircha's elegant script. For Myra's education. Every child should know that humans and vampires once lived as allies, before fear divided us. Perhaps her generation will remember what ours forgot. Hannah traced the embossed cover, then looked at the pendant she still wore, hidden beneath her shirt. At the life she'd built from ashes. At the future that had seemed impossible 2 months ago. She'd saved a vampire grandmother. And in return, she'd been given something more precious than safety or wealth. A voice that could change the fate of 2 worlds. She didn't know where that voice would lead. But for the first time in her life, Hannah Hayes wasn't afraid to find out.